Hello and welcome back to Courtside. I'm Andrew Cohen, joined by Mike Randall, Sam Posman. How you guys doing?
Doing great,
Good.
Andrew.
Been a while.
It
It has
has.
been a while.
And today we have brought on our favorite guest of all time. That's from the Posman household. King Jammer on Twitter, at King Jammer underscore on Twitter. Ben Posman is back. How are you today, sir?
I'm doing fantastic. Thank you guys for having me back on the pod. Looking forward to getting down to business.
Now, it's kind of the dead time of the year, I feel like. You know, it's NFL training camp stuff. It's the late NBA offseason. It's like the 1 month a year where the NBA is kind of irrelevant. There's baseball, but the Red Sox are bad, so I don't care as much. In the middle of the summer, we've been blessed by Ben Posman dropping his top 14 basketball players of all time. He dropped these, what was it, about a week ago?
This was 6 days ago. Yes.
6 days ago. And it sent ripples through the Posman household as well as our group chat. We all have many things to say. But first, we'll give you a chance to speak on your decision-making process before we go in.
All right. Well, that is a lovely introduction. So thank you. The first thing I want to touch on is why it is a top 14 list and not a top 10 list. I think there is a very big distinction between the group of players that I've chosen and other players that may not really be top 10 or top 14 material. So here's my thought process. Every NBA player who has at least a league MVP and has led two teams to an NBA championship is a worthy top 10 player. There is not a single player in NBA history with those qualifications that you cannot make the argument to be top 10. Everyone's pool kind of has the same sort of players, the same type, the same players. So this really boils it down and establishes parameters for that list. So these are the only 14 guys in NBA history with those achievements, and these are the only 14 guys that you could even argue for top 10. So,
All right. Do you want to go through the list? Do you want to read everyone off for the listeners?
do you want me to just how you want me to go about this? I can just rattle them off 14 to 1, and then we can dive into it, or
I think that sounds good. What do you guys think? Yeah?
Yeah, start by rattling it off. If we want to break it up, we can. But let's
yeah,
hear it.
totally. So here's what I got here. Number 14, Wilt Chamberlain. Number 13, Kevin Durant. Number 12, Bill Russell. Rest in peace. Number 11, Stephen Curry. Number 10, Shaq. Number 9, Hakeem Olajuwon. Number 8, Kobe Bryant. Number 7, Julius Erving. Number 6, Tim Duncan. Number 5, Larry Bird. Number 4, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Number 3, Magic Johnson. Number 2, Michael Jordan. And number 1, LeBron Raymond James.
I don't like the
Thank you,
list, but I love the top selection. So I'm willing
Coach-
to over a lot because you have the balls to put LeBron James where he should be at the top.
Coach Hammer just had an
Just
aneurysm.
on the podcast.
Someone needs to check on Coach Hammer. He might not be doing well after
Is this why you're not playing football next year, Sam? Coach Hammer found out about this?
Coach Hammer's too busy dealing with porcupines and groundhogs to worry about LeBron James.
All right. So let's start off with. I want to start off with Bill Russell and Wilt Chamberlain. Personally,
Yeah,
that's where I start. These guys are criminally low. Criminally low. Explain yourself on those two specifically.
All right. Well, one thing that I heavily consider is the gap in the era in which they played between the best players in the league and the worst players in the league. If you were a top player in that NBA, the capabilities and the reaches of your success are far greater than what they are in today's NBA. Today, if in today's NBA, if you are a top player, you might have as Mike and I have debated over Twitter, you may have a 2 to 3 year window of, playoff success championships. In that era, it was a little more open, especially if you were on a great team, such as Bill Russell. So first off, I think Wilt Chamberlain might be the greatest regular season player of all time. I think the performances that he put up, the achievements that he had, I think there's a very, very good argument that he's the greatest regular season player of all time. However, how did that translate to the playoffs? He won 2 NBA championships in a time where if you're a player who's that good, in my opinion, the ceiling, the expectations should be a little bit higher that you can win more than 2 championships surrounded by these all-time teammates of his. So that's why I have him low, Wilt Chamberlain. I feel like what he did in the regular season was astonishing. I don't feel like for his era, it didn't translate to really crack the upper echelon of players due to his lack of championships. Now, I put Kevin Durant above him because Kevin Durant has had similar playoff success in a time that is a lot harder to have playoff success. And I feel like Kevin Durant is a worthy number 13 all time. And I'll get in more to that in a second. But Bill Russell is 12. I have Bill Russell 12, not because I feel like what he did was 2 spots better than Wilt. I criticize Wilt for not being a champion. Bill Russell's the ultimate champion. So that doesn't really make sense. Like, why is he only 2 spots higher?
I agree.
Okay, well, I'm getting to that. I have him 2 spots higher because I feel like his resume in the era that it was achieved does not beat my number 11 player. And it is not
Who's your number 11 player?
Shaquille O'Neal. No,
it's
Steph
Steph
Curry.
Stephen Curry. I don't feel like it beats Stephen Curry's resume. And
who's
this
your number
list
10? Who's your number?
This list
It was
is instead of looking at it from a holistic perspective, I want the focus to be interval based. How does one person's achievements and resume stack up to the person in front of them? That is how I've made a lot of my decisions. For example, I feel like it's a lot easier to argue Shaq over Kobe than it is to argue Hakeem over Kobe. That being said, in my opinion, Hakeem is still a greater player than Shaq. So it is more based on how they're stacked up against the guys that are directly in front of them and less about the individual achievements that may have warranted them a higher spot.
All right. I like the explanation.
There's a lot to unpack here.
There's a lot to unpack here. It's kind of tricky to start. But the glaring one for me, I'm going to go and say, I think Sam might be on the same page, and probably Andrew too. If you're going to say that you're going to base this on arguments with the player directly above each individual player,
yes,
I have to hear the argument that Steph Curry's above Bill Russell. And then we'll probably all three of us eviscerate it because there is not an argument to be made for Steph Curry to be above Bill Russell, unless you're going to strip that era so completely that it's not worthy to have these guys even on your list. And if that case, we can remove them and we can take them out and we can say the era doesn't warrant them being in consideration with all the other players. They're on a different echelon. We're going to leave them as legends in their era. But if you're going to leave them in, we have to hear the argument for that.
of course. I don't feel like that they should be taken out because they are legends in their era. The argument for Steph over Bill Russell.
I don't want to hear the change the game argument because no one jumped on defense before Bill Russell. So don't even start with that.
And you're Sam right there. He's the leader of the fan club of the. He changed the game.
Yeah.
argument.
Yeah.
Bill Russell
I
changed the
fucking-
game in ways we don't even know because it
Yeah.
happened so long ago that basketball in our lifetime has been shaped by the way him and Wilt played basketball.
I actually host
Which
the
is fair.
meetings for the Steph Curry Change the Game fan club.
Yes.
Okay. In my
Cook dinner.
decision is 90% era based. I feel like the era that guys play in has a very high. I hold it in high regard in my decision making. I think someone that played in the 1950s and 1960s did not go through as many challenges and overcame as many difficult challenges as someone who played in the most recent decade of basketball. And that is not from an no. That is not from an off-court perspective. I'm not taking a social stance. I'm saying on the basketball court, from the pure perspective of playing basketball, the guys that are against Bill Russell, these are
Wilt
not
Chamberlain.
players. That's one. These are not guys. There's no LeBron James. There's no Kobe Bryant. There's no Kevin Durant for the years that he was opposing Steph. They're just not as good basketball players. And I feel like Steph achieving 4 rings, being the guy on 2 of them, in this era of basketball is a greater accomplishment than what Bill Russell achieved. I just think the competition is that much higher and that much better.
Can I go?
Please go.
Steph Curry never went through anything that actual difficult. We've been over this. There was no hump. Never got over it. The first hump he ran into, LeBron James shoved. I was going to say something really inappropriate there. There hasn't been the adversity for him. You don't have. He never got past the Pistons. He never got past the Celtics. Never got past the Celtics. The Celtics team LeBron had to get past. He never got past them. He got shooed into a championship because the entire playoff field got injured. Then he throws down one of the greatest choke jobs of all time. Then he goes and cries and brings the second greatest player of his generation to his team to get him over the hump. And then this is his most impressive championship run. And I'm not going to take a lot away from this one because he played great. But I think a lot of us were left with the feeling that the field wasn't that impressive. There wasn't this titan to get through, or like you're left wanting more from him as a champion and as a playoff performer. We literally we're 6 finals in and we just had his first transcendent finals performance. 6 finals in, Bill Russell won 11. Now, you're not wrong that the era matters here, right? But this is what I'm talking about, where if you're going to weigh eras that strongly, I understand weighing them. But if you're going 90%, I think you should take them out. Because the only way to objectively rank players from different decades is to weigh them in their decade. Now, because the 60s and 70s or 50s and 60s are so much different than the rest, you can weight it a little differently. I'm okay with that. But weighing it so much so that being the core foundation piece for an 11 championship team outweighs being the core foundation piece for 2.
No, and Bill Russell's also coaching for some of those championships.
He coached for a couple, and then the other thing that you have to, that I think gets overblown, is people look at the Bill Russell teams. And I've been, I think at one point in time I had Russell ranked very low as well when I was doing teams, and then I thought about it a little more, and I've learned more about basketball. The thing that gets overlooked, and I'm gonna shout out Nick right now because I think a lot of his stuff will probably come up in this argument, because I'm not sure, but were you motivated kind of by his top 50 list? Because I paid a lot of attention to that too. It was a great list. And kind of,
yes, I followed that. I followed the list the whole way.
Yeah, so he did a great job, and he actually did kind of an episode on Bill Russell after he passed. And one of the things he really harped on was Russell was winning long, competitive, tight series year in and year out. It wasn't like honestly, it was not the 2017 and 2018 Warriors that got to wash through everybody without a challenge. Russell's winning game 7s against Wilt by 2 points, by 1 point. He played in that run, he played 12, 13, 14 elimination games, and he won all of them, every single one. And a lot of them were close. So I understand that the gross talent base isn't the same, but he was still in dog fights. He's still in competitive series. He's still in positions to lose year in and year in and year out. And he came through every single time. And the number one thing you can harp on with Steph is we've seen him come through one time now, where you really felt like if he didn't perform to that level, they lose. Now, none of us saw Bill Russell play. Our parents never saw Bill Russell play. But even if you just go back and you look at box scores and you read about games, they're winning by 1, 2, 3 points in tight series, and he's dropping 30-30s and 20-40s and all kinds of crazy box score numbers. And his impact on the game has been lauded throughout history. I can't get past ranking someone who I don't consider one of the great champions. I don't want to discredit Steph. You're right. He belongs in the conversation. And he is a champion. So we're talking about champions, which is a different echelon from players who are not. But among champions, Russell is the greatest, is arguably the greatest or the absolute greatest. And Steph, of this list, might be the weakest champion, maybe outside of Kevin Durant, you have on this list. In terms of who they beat, the journey through, right? And Bill, not every year was probably getting running into brick walls, but an 11-4 gap. And then if you skew it for the Kevin Durant years, however you want to do that, I don't see the argument. And the argument for Steph being this high is usually his impact on winning, because we understand that Kevin Durant's a better individual talent. We saw that when they played together. Bill, no one has a better argument for impact on winning than Bill Russell, because he won more than anyone else. And he did so in a style where he wasn't just dropping 60 points a game. It was his very impact as a leader. Everything Steph does and everything Steph's built his legacy around, Russell did at a higher level. So I don't think you can skew the weight of the era so vastly to leapfrog those two players. I think you might as well take Russell and Wilt out and leave the disrespect and the delusion out of the argument entirely, if that's the argument you're going to make.
All I'll say is this, is when they were each the worst seeds in their conference, Bill Russell won his final championship and Steph bowed out to Memphis in the play-in tournament.
I was just going to say,
who else said, who was on that Warriors team? That was an actual.
LeBron took teams like that to the finals.
And
no,
LeBron's
we're not doing.
no.
We're not doing the LeBron.
I have Steph Curry
not
number
a
11.
Jordan
and
took
I have,
teams that bad for
no.
them.
Line drawn.
I was going to say, in terms of Bill Russell and all the championships, if you want to discredit, I mean, he was also beating the Lakers year after year, who everyone would say was, I mean, what, they had 2 or 3 Hall of Famers every year? Jerry West, Elgin Baylor. The very last championship Bill Russell won, that was Wilt's first year in LA. They brought Wilt to LA. Game 7 in LA. Celtics win. Bill Russell, as player coach, takes them the championship. So it's not like, so you can talk about regular season, they're beating up on all these lesser teams, but in the finals, it was the best of the best every year.
When it mattered, it mattered.
Yeah. Andrew, to strengthen that point, if you look at the NBA's all-time scoring leaders in terms of points per game, I'm quite sure that Elgin, Jerry West, and Wilt are all about 27 points per game or above, and they're all in the top 6. That's the three-headed monster he's beating.
Year in, year out.
And Steph,
the key distinction.
Steph took apart Marcus Smart crapping his pants on national television, Jason Tatum shriveling up like SpongeBob in that episode where they get taken out of the water. Right?
But I also feel like we have the luxury of knowing those nuances to the game. We didn't watch the finals. There could have been players that crumbled in the finals that we.
But 11-4 speaks for itself. It's not.
But it's not an even fight. If you're paired with Bill Russell for 8 of his championships had Bob Cousy on his team, which
we're going to talk about the team. Hold on. We're going to talk about the team.
I'm saying, I'm
Kevin
talking
Durant.
about. I'm talking.
You want Kevin Durant with Bob goddamn Cousy, Ben Buzz?
No.
Because you've told
Exactly.
me that
I'm saying you are simultaneously proving two of my arguments in one
No, he's not.
by not by
I
by
need to hear
noting
this.
by noting the difference in caliber of a 1950s and 60s NBA player and a 2010s NBA player. There's and the amount of them in the NBA. Bob Cousy was an 8-time assist champion. He was a 1957 league MVP, and we are attributing all of the Celtics success to Bill Russell in that time frame. That is not a fair representation of how it actually was.
So we're gonna talk. Kevin Durant was blatantly like a good step above Steph for 2 finals runs, like a good step above.
Yes, he was, and that is
he was a step
and that
above.
is something that is it is yes, that is something that is fact. However, the players in the NBA, and I will go back to this 1,000 times if I have to. You can talk about comparing guys to the era that they're in, but we don't have that luxury with a top 14 list, because I feel like these guys have to be included. I feel like it is more disrespectful. It is more disrespectful to take them out than it is to leave them in and be compared to guys who have played against a higher level competition in a faster, quicker, stronger, and smarter NBA. And to say that this is a player who actually deserves to be ahead of the greatest. We're gonna look back at the NBA 20 years from now and we're gonna be like, Steph Curry is the most impactful player of his generation. Him and LeBron James are going to the impact. We haven't seen Steph's, and we're starting to see it. We haven't
no one
seen
jumped
it in full
before
effect.
Bill. No one jumped. Teams weren't.
You're going to
coaches
say the
wouldn't-
same thing. You're going to say the same thing in 15 years about Steph. You're going to say
No,
no
I
one
won't,
did this
because people
before
jumped
Steph.
on defense.
Well, not exactly
Jaylen
jumping.
Brown does it too
I'm
much.
saying equivalent phrases. We can see Bill Russell's impact in the NBA. We cannot see Steph's long-term impact yet.
Yeah, we can. 3-pointer numbers
we-
consistently rise every single year, and they
That's
have
it.
since.
That's,
Yeah,
that's the only impact. He's never, and that's a great impact. But his
But
impact is muted.
that's what I'm saying. We haven't seen the rest of what it will
All right,
be. We can see Bill Russell's. I'm putting Steph Curry in this position because decades from now, people are gonna be like, this is one of the most impactful players of all time, and has taken a game to a level that I think Wilt Chamberlain could have done. That Wilt Chamberlain did. Not to say Bill Russell didn't do it. I'm just saying, like, no one can do what Steph did.
So let me say something.
Yes.
And I don't want to get caught up in the Bill Russell thing because obviously there's plenty more to talk about. And I don't want to. Mike's shaking his head.
We're
Mike
not
wants to-
stopping until we're through with him. This is worth the lashing.
So you have Dr. J at 7. You've Bill Russell
do.
You've Bill Russell at 12. I've spoke with you off the air. One of the things you mentioned with Dr. J is that you give him full credit for his years in the ABA.
I do.
So my question to you is this, and I wrote it down because I had it perfectly worded in my head and I didn't want to mess it up. If Dr. J gets bonus points for the ABA stuff, why do Russell and Wilt get punished for playing in the league before the merger if they're both playing against the same number of teams? And to be honest, the NBA was probably a little more talented.
Well, first off, Bill Russell played in 1959. Dr. J was playing the ABA in 1974. So it's not exactly, you can't exactly make that comparison. They're not identical eras. Julius Erving won an NBA MVP in 1981. That's a completely different game. And the game
you
has
were a
evolved so
decade
much
off on
since.
Russell. Russell played till 69, not 59.
I didn't say he played till 59. I said he was playing in 59.
Well, he also played until 69.
That's great.
It's important because it's a 4-year difference
But
from the year that you
Julius
said.
Erving was arguably the best he was in the NBA over a decade later. Then Bill Russell retired. Not like,
Ben,
especially in that time in the NBA where it was extremely it was very, very susceptible to change. And
So
12
here's-
years from 2008 to now is not, or 2010 to now is not the same as it was from 1969 or 1959 to 1981. It's a curve. There's 12 years back then changed the game a lot more than it in 12 years today.
It's 5 years.
Ben, the 70s was like a dark age for basketball. Like it literally almost killed basketball. It was so bad. No one watched basketball.
Yeah.
Like I wanted to throw that out there. I have one other point about the era thing, then Andrew, if you have anything, I know Sam and I have been yapping a lot. So if you're gonna skew the eras this heavily, you do have to understand this one thing. Human beings at that time, as basketball players, were on a level playing field. It's not like we took Bill Russell, pulled him out of 2020 with all the advancements in workout technology, nutrition, the advancement in basketball, pulled out this fully equipped, primed, modern age basketball player, and it's like, you know what we're gonna do? We're gonna drop you in with a bunch of plumbers. He went through the exact same challenges every other player in that era had, and was so much better than everyone else in that era that we now have to disregard the era he played in because he was able to rise to such a level of dominance. So you're not wrong that the average NBA player was a lot worse back then. I've even said that about the 90s, right? But the playing field is level. So if you're gonna skew eras that badly, it almost completely takes out of account. What if we bring Bill Russell into the eras of some of these other players? You don't think that the change of the game, the way the game had changed, and the developments in workouts, nutrition, and health would matter for him too? Like, there's too many variables and hypotheticals you can toss around with eras that it's one thing to skew them and weight them a little bit. And I'm fine with that. You'll probably hear me do it a couple times the rest of the episode. But to do them so far to the point that you're arguing for a single Dr. J MVP in 1981 to outweigh 5 from Bill Russell in the 60s, I think is completely missing the mark and kind of borderline inappropriate for a responsible basketball fan that you seem to be. You're skewing it way too heavily, way too far, and not taking it into account that the era was the era for everybody. And Bill was so dominant that it's almost ruined his era.
Andrew, do you have anything to add? And then I have something.
Yeah, I do. So I was also going to add, and Mike mentioned how the 70s is kind of a dead era for basketball. I mean, every time people talk about the 80s, it's like Magic and Larry Bird saved basketball. You want to know why? Because the 70s was not a good time for basketball, right? But you look back, we talk about the 60s with Bill Russell and Wilt Chamberlain. You don't talk about the 70s. Is there any player on this list that played most of their career in the 70s besides Julius Erving? I guess Kareem, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's it.
Mm-hmm.
So is it really that much of a different era than we look at the 60s, right? 2 players from the 60s, 2 players from the 70s.
The difference between 65 and 75 is not big enough to warrant a +6 ranking between Dr. J and Bill Russell when Dr. J literally double or tripled, or when Bill Russell literally double or tripled every single accomplishment Dr. J put on paper.
Okay, Ben, talk about the decision to put Magic ahead of Kareem. Because I'm someone that has always had Kareem ahead of Magic, and recently I too made a switch. So you're gonna actually have some backing on this one.
Well, I don't want to jump ahead too quickly because that's getting up to the top 3, top 4 of the list. If we want to continue to
Sam, if you don't
delve
mind,
into the
No, by all means.
but that's like the pinnacle argument I think we'll have because we all know the top 2 are where they should be.
Yeah, but we'll put in a link to a previous episode if people want to hear that argument again.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Let me pivot. Let me pivot here a little bit. Talk about. So you have. How far do you want to go down? We could do Shaq and Hakeem. You want to do that?
I'll do
Okay.
Shaq and Hakeem.
You have Hakeem above Shaq by 1.
I do.
Hakeem is directly behind Kobe Bryant, directly in front of Shaq, 8, 9, and 10.
Yes. Yes.
I think this is one of the better parts. I think this is a very good part of the list. I'm impressed by it.
I appreciate that.
Let's give Ben some flowers.
Yeah,
Shout out Ben.
I like that too, Ben. I'm good with rolling with Hakeem over Shaq as well. I think a lot of people that might catch their eye, but if you do a deep enough dive, which I sounds like you have, you start to understand that Hakeem was better.
He is better. And he also, I mean, go back to the, I believe, 1994 finals. This was Shaq. I mean, this is ultimately 1995. Sorry, this is ultimately what makes me have Hakeem over Shaq. I mean, you could, I think being, in my opinion, the greatest defensive player of all time certainly helps your case. But when Hakeem matched up against Shaq, and people say, "Oh, it was baby Shaq," no, it was first team All NBA Shaq. It was scoring title Shaq, and Hakeem won that finals, and Hakeem won the matchup. And you can have these comparisons where, okay, Shaq won more championships. Yes. Shaq also won with some all-time teammates. And I'm not the type of guy to say, well, you know, I don't like discrediting Shaq, and then I also don't like discrediting Kobe, because I feel like that's not fair. Shaq was clearly the guy. But Hakeem could do more things on the basketball court and still achieve an elite level of playoff success, directly beating Shaq. He's the greatest defensive player of all time.
Second, Bill Russell.
That is a ridiculous take.
Ridiculous.
Okay, we're
That's a
not doing
ridiculous
this again.
take.
We can't do this again. Keep going, Ben. We're just gonna pretend that it happened.
That I'm having a hard time moving past that. And this ties into our other argument. All right. I will continue. I feel like Hakeem did a lot with, frankly, less than what Shaq was given to him in his career. So that is why I have Hakeem over Shaq. You can bring up the insane blocks and steals stat where he's number 1 in blocks all time, and he's top 10 in steals, and no other center is even top 60. So it's incredible, and I think he's just the better all-around basketball player than Shaq. You can talk about the stretch of dominance, but I just don't think it does enough.
I have no problems with that. I like that a lot, actually.
Good. That's my argument too.
Big Hakeem guy as well.
Yep.
Now you've Kobe.
Yep.
And then you've Dr. J, which we've touched on, and then you've Tim Duncan at 6.
Well,
Yes.
I think we did the Dr. J Bill Russell thing, but we did the Bill Russell and everybody thing. I think we need the Dr. J over everyone under Dr. J.
Yeah, I would agree.
Because Dr. J would probably bring up the rear for me in this list. Maybe I push him over KD.
I agree with that.
The rest, I have a hard time putting him above. Certainly have a hard time putting him above the man directly behind him.
Kobe Bryant. That is something that which is entirely fair. Now, my thing with Dr. J is that he was LeBron James before LeBron James, in the sense that he could take teams to the finals, and he didn't need an all-star cast around him. Yes, LeBron had some amazing teammates, However, that bare minimum was also present for a lot of Julius Erving's championship or finals runs, which Kobe Bryant did not have. Kobe Bryant missed the playoffs his first year without Shaq. He was a first round exit the next year, and he was a first round exit the next year. It wasn't until they traded for Pau Gasol at the end of the 2008 season that they made the playoffs. That they made the finals. And obviously, that stretch continued. However, going back to Dr. J, you look at the let's have my list here. If you look back at the let me pull it up actually. Okay.
Are you looking for Dr. J's first finals run?
Yes, Dr. J first finals run. I believe that was 1970.
77.
70 in the ABA.
Oh, the ABA.
I think it's important. It's important to include 1974. 1974. That was his MVP year. This was the first of his 3 MVPs. He led the league in scoring that year. And over the next 2 years after that, he would win 2 more MVPs. He would go back to the finals and win it, and he would win another scoring title. So that ABA resume is stellar. He is the GOAT of the ABA. Okay. So now it's his first year in the NBA, 1977. He had his second best player in the 1977 finals in terms of scoring was a rookie who was he was his first year in the NBA. He was a one-time All-Star, and he did not I don't think he even put up 16 a game. So not a stellar cast for his first NBA playoff run. He then continues to, first off, I just want to say he made the finals 6 times in his career, including ABA, which is remarkable. And people are saying, okay, well, he lost 3. But without stellar teammates, it wasn't until he was a little bit past his prime in 83 that he won with Moses Malone. Obviously, Moses was the guy on that team. Julius was still 20 a game in the finals. But, I mean, not crazy. Not a crazy, like, Andre Iguodala role, something like that.
So essentially what this comes down to is that the way that Dr. J lost his finals is more impressive than the way that Kobe won his finals.
And in all of his finals runs, or in 4 of them, he was either with his second best player was a 0-time All-Star or a 1-time All-Star. That's ridiculous. Like that's something that you can't say about really any other player in NBA history. He's doing things with a supporting cast that either isn't established yet or hasn't had any success on their own.
But I could say the same thing that Jason Tatum took a team with a 1-time All-Star to the NBA Finals.
Once.
I have 2 points here. Number 1, on the 1977 Sixers team, they had a player named George McGinnis, went on to be a Hall of Famer.
Yes.
Averaged 30 points a game in the ABA in 1975.
Yes.
So he at that point, 77 was his 5th straight All-Star appearance. I would also say, now I'll give Dr. J the 1976 ABA championship because that Nuggets team had a bunch of really good players on it. in the 1974 ABA Finals. Is that the year? Yeah.
Yes.
They beat the Utah Stars.
Yes.
Go look at the Utah Stars roster and tell me that you legitimately recognize any of those guys' names. Do you know John Beasley? No? How about
No.
Willie Wise? Ron
It's.
Boone?
I mean, this
So-
this just ties back. This just ties back into in the dark ages of basketball. No one really watched basketball, and
Okay.
because there's two leagues. I mean, you can't really in the dark age time already. There's not really a huge attention on this other league that's happening, which has players that really just don't get any recognition.
But I'm
So I
saying
think recognition is not a huge thing. It's just what they achieved in actuality.
but what I'm saying is you're trying to use the ABA argument. You're trying to incorporate it and be like, okay, this is what is going to push Dr. J over the top of a lot of these other guys. But then you're going to go discount the NBA in the 60s, where Bill Russell was beating the best of the best year in, year out. I would also say, and we've had this discussion before, and one of my go-to lines is any NBA championship victory. That run is going to be infinitely more impressive than any losing run. Doesn't matter how far you got, doesn't matter what team you dragged. Any NBA championship is more impressive than, oh, we got to the finals and lost. Sorry.
From a team perspective, that is the case.
I'm even saying from a I would even say from a player perspective.
From an individual perspective, in your opinion, what was more impressive? The Kevin Durant and the Warriors in the 2018 series, or LeBron James through his playoff?
I never look at LeBron James's 2018 drag the Cavs to the championship run as a point to make an argument for or against his legacy. Because I could very easily poke holes in the teams he beat to get there. Like, the Warriors did win the championship. Like, there's a lot of things that can go wrong, and believe me, I will discredit those championships with the best of them. But the fact of the matter is they still won the championship. Like, LeBron didn't. Is it his fault? No. Like, he did everything he could, but he still didn't win. And so I can't look at that and be like, oh, well, I mean, like, Michael Jordan was pretty good. But did you see LeBron in 2018 drag Jeff Green and George Hill to the finals? Like, it doesn't do anything for me. It doesn't move the needle in either direction.
Did you see Jaylen Brown drag Jason Tatum to the finals that 1 year? Do you guys remember when that happened?
He didn't drag him to the finals. He dragged him in the finals, though.
All right, Andrew, I got one thing for you and one thing for Ben.
All right.
First off, I agree with Ben that an individual run for an individual player in a losing effort can be more impressive than an individual run for an individual player in a winning effort. Your team thing, fine. But you can't argue that LeBron's 2015 run, or not 2015 or 2018 or 2007, those would probably be the three, are not more impressive than Steph's first championship.
Oh.
Probably KD's second one.
But like, am I gonna discredit
Kawhi's first one?
Am I gonna discredit the Warriors' second championship because they played that bad Cavs team though? Like when we're talking about those two circumstances, right? Like, yeah. The gap was huge, but like the Warriors, I don't know.
I'm just saying, I totally understand your argument. I don't have any problem with anyone that feels that way. I'm just saying that what's actually a more impressive basketball feat, history, you're right that history remembers the champions. You're completely right in that sense. I just feel personally, I'm more in line with Ben personally, that I can be more impressed and take more in and give more credit to a player who is unbelievable in a losing effort than a player who may be good in a winning effort. That's all I'm saying. We don't need to get super nitpicky. Yeah. For Ben, I first want to say that I like the list. I like that you put a lot of work into it, and I think you did a good job and you made it really interesting, which we really appreciate. And I'm saying that because I'm especially kind of coming after you pretty hard. I'm about to do it again. You just had one of the more hypocritical arguments I have ever heard. You just flushed the 60s era of basketball down the toilet and then told me that winning the B League makes Dr. J more impressive than Kobe Bryant. You can't have both there, buddy. I agree with you that the ABA should not be tossed out entirely. But that's not to say you can't take it with a grain of salt that it was the inferior league, even if it might have been close. Fact of the matter, it was not the NBA, and it sure as hell was not the NBA we see today. And yes, Dr. J was very impressive, but once he got to the NBA, his accomplishments tailed off a little bit with his career. You're right, he made a couple impressive finals runs, and then he had kind of like Kobe's run in 2000, his first championship with Shaq. He was a good player and a decent part of that run, but it wasn't really his run, similar to the sense where Dr. J's championship wasn't quite his run. But the second two with Shaq, Kobe deserves an immense amount of credit for. You can't just brush off, oh, he played with Shaq. They went through some pretty dominant Spurs teams in the West in that period. They didn't beat any great Eastern Conference teams, I don't think, in those runs, but Kobe was undisputedly the closer. Sam and I have actually had this argument about, I think it was Shaq and Steph. We talked about the importance of being the closer. Kobe had the 8-point overtime run against the Pacers, right? So you can't completely discount that era for him. And then he sticks around. They go through a little bit of downfall, and if you want to kind of harp on that a little bit, you can, but I don't think Dr. J's resume is ironclad enough that little lull for Kobe is enough to bounce one over the other, because Kobe then drags that team out of the muck with, yes, they do add Powell, but Powell is not a world beater here, guys. He is 19 point per game. Dude, he's not, he wasn't a huge needle mover at the time. He was a good, solid all-star. That's what he was. He was never sniffing superstar. And he takes them to three straight finals, wins 2 of them, and beats a lot of really good teams along the way. And he's doing this in era with a young LeBron James in the East, that Spurs teams in the West, right? So I don't want to act like it's that you can't make an argument for Dr. J, because I think you've made a pretty compelling one. But the hypocrisy with which you argued against Bill and for Dr. J, I think, is going to strip a lot of the credibility off propelling the Dr. J ABA accomplishments to the status they would need to be at to push him over Kobe Bryant, who accomplished everything he accomplished in a fully functioning NBA, chock full of all NBA and Hall of Fame players that he beat in getting his titles. He should also have more MVPs than he does, but that's a different argument.
He shouldn't, but that's he deserves one MVP. But I will respond to that. I'm going to go back to the gap that because there's really no line to draw. There's really no line to cut off arrows. We use arbitrary, like 60s, 70s. But the era itself is not controlled by like the difference between 1970 and 1969. It's really how the game was played in the years, of how quickly the game changed in the years around like this time frame that we're talking about and how it was before. So I think we hold the 80s to be kind of like a turning point in the NBA where we can kind of be like, okay, enough of this era, bias aside, these championships are worth one for one as these championships are worth. And I think that there's strong merit to that. And Dr. J played and was taking teams to the finals in 1980 and 1982 and winning MVPs in 1981 to the finals just a few years before that in 77. So I feel like it's not so much as an era bias, it's just to see how the NBA progressed after Bill Russell left, and to see like that few years between Bill Russell and Dr. J is frankly a lot compared to the years between Dr. J and Larry Bird and Magic and, you know, the rise of Michael Jordan. Like, to say that Julius Erving took teams to the finals 3 years before Michael Jordan went to the NBA, like, and by the way, that was before his win in the finals. So there's not much. I understand on paper, okay, well, the difference in years is not that much. So yes, it seems as though I'm being hypocritical, but when you dive in to see how basketball was being played and to see how Julius Erving really started to transform that small forward position, there's really no argument to that.
Then I would say, like, what's the difference in the 5 years between 69 and 74 where Russell and Dr. J won their last and first respective titles? Like,
Yeah, that's my question.
Yeah.
Is what was the giant leap that basketball made between the two players? There was the Bill Russell era in Wilt, and they changed a whole hell of a lot about ball. Then the leagues merge, and you get the 3-point line. And then Magic starts running Showtime, and that's when basketball changes. No, nothing changed in the 70s, man. It was freaking posted up, play big man basketball, hit jumpers. There's no 3-point line. There's not too dramatic shifts. The pace was up. The stats were all over the place. Dr. J is part of the group that pushed the evolution of basketball forward with his above the rim ability. But the game itself that he walked into was not drastically different in any way from the one that Bill Russell left. And it didn't change until he was done. The league really changed with the 3-point line and the Showtime team. And he frankly lost to that Showtime team. He clipped one, got a couple runs in towards the end. But the bulk of his work is, you can really say, almost in the same vein of the earlier guys.
Well, it's not
It's
just
hard.
it's not just a couple runs. I mean, there's pre 3-point line. That was 2 chips in the ABA, and then the finals run in 77. Post 3-point line, there was a championship in 83 and the 2 finals runs in 80 and 82. So he really played in these different eras that you're talking about and was a champion in both, was an MVP in both. I mean, this is a guy that didn't matter what era was on him, he was still going to be extremely successful. He was
That's a good point.
one of the best adapters to the game, and his skill set wasn't really based on the era that he was in, which you cannot say about a lot of different guys that I have beneath him, such as Bill Russell, who we only saw in that era, but Dr. J played in a different one. He played in a different time of basketball.
All right,
he was still very successful.
Let's look at Tim Duncan. What do you say to someone that says, I watched them play, Kobe Bryant was a better basketball player than Tim Duncan?
Because it doesn't matter if you are first off, if this list was based on who was simply the better basketball player, I would
personally have Bob Cousy at number 1.
I'm just saying it would look a lot different. So just being the eye test, a better basketball player from, I mean, that doesn't really mean that much to me. Second, being a better basketball player doesn't mean that's coming from the most informed people around the NBA. I mean, it could be coming from a guy who just likes flashy dunks and
Dr. J
and being I'm talking.
Sorry,
I'm talking Kobe Bryant versus
I was
Tim
just trying to be an ass. That's my fault, guys. Shouldn't say that.
I mean, if shooting threes when you're being quadruple teamed is your thing, and you make 1 out of every 50 you take, I mean, you're gonna be like, oh yeah, this guy's a better basketball player. But what it boils down to is that he is not as great of a champion, and they played in the exact same era. He was Tim Duncan has won more MVP than Kobe Bryant does. And whether you think he deserved more or not, which he doesn't, it still doesn't matter because he only has 1. Tim Duncan was people think that by 2014 he was done. And he was like, oh, well, this was Kawhi Leonard's team. Well, not really. He was first team All-NBA in 2013, this year before.
Thank you for explaining that.
And he was still, okay. And he was still, I believe it was 19 and 11 in the finals. So he's really not like he fell by the wayside player. It's now Kawhi Leonard's team. Kawhi Leonard, the narrative would be a lot different and this is kind of the LeBron James impact of the game, if finals MVP wasn't awarded to the player that's guarding LeBron. I think it would look a lot different. I think we'd look more fondly on Tim Duncan's resume.
It's a good take.
I also feel like he is a guy, and I'm going to pull up my little, 4 out of his 5. And you can't say the same about Kobe Bryant. You just can't. And I
repeat
feel
that,
like
Ben.
that
You cut out a little bit.
You cut out. Repeat
Oh, I'm
that.
sorry. I said Tim Duncan was the guy on 4 of his NBA championships, and that you cannot say the same about Kobe Bryant.
I got a question.
Yes.
Because I am in complete agreement that Tim Duncan is placed correctly above Kobe Bryant. What was the team he wasn't the guy on?
I mean, clearly 2014. That's when it's most debatable. I'm just saying it's still an argument for it.
Yeah.
So safely baseline.
So he's 5 for 5. Like
I was going to say.
You could, you could make that definite argument. I'm just saying, people are gonna be like, okay, Kawhi Leonard this, Kawhi Leonard that. I mean, that's a fair argument. I'm just saying it's minimum 4.
I only asked that question to set up my argument, which would only boost yours. You're right. He is definitively the best player on 4, and it's his team in 14. Now, is he what he was at one point? No, but I don't think you can make an argument that if you look out through the course of that season and that playoff run, that was a more important spur. And then you get to the finals, and you mentioned it, you can almost put this as a feather in LeBron James' cap. Kawhi Leonard wins the MVP for averaging 17 points per game and holding LeBron. Remember, he wins the MVP for playing defense. LeBron averages 20 and a half on 57 and 50% from 3 in that series. That's all. Andrew, I know you're rolling your eyes.
I mean,
now,
and then you can literally point to the next year too.
Yeah, did he play better defense? Did he play better defense than those stats indicate? Absolutely. He was disruptive and played LeBron as well as anyone can. But Tim Duncan had as much claim to that finals MVP as Kawhi. And if you look at throughout the playoff run, it was still Duncan's team. It was more of a collective effort as opposed to him and the other 2 of the big 3 really dominating.
Yeah.
I agree. I like where you have Tim Duncan on this list. I think your top 6 is really solid. I like your top 6. Now,
Hold on. I got a problem with Larry Bird.
Too high, too low?
Too high.
Too high.
He shouldn't be above Tim Duncan.
Yeah.
You can fall into some crazy YouTube holes and be like, I think Larry Bird's the best person to ever touch a basketball.
Yeah, I'm sure you could. But their careers were very similar. Except Duncan did it for 20 and Bird did it for 12 and therefore accomplished more. With a very similar structure. Sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say I do put stock though into the like Magic and Bird saved basketball thing too though. Like I do put a lot of stock into that. I would also say really quickly, like in my personal list, like there are a couple players you had, like I don't know, Bill Russell, Wilt Chamberlain, that I would heavily consider putting above Larry Bird. But considering you have them way back, I do like your top six. I mean, listen, we could go back and forth on LeBron and MJ all day. The fact is they're 1 and 2, and we've had that discussion before. But I want to go back to what Sam mentioned earlier about Magic and Kareem. What was the decision-making process there?
Okay.
So
So,
journalist question, Andrew Cohen.
so I have been a person that has argued like you can seriously make and consider that that Kareem is the GOAT. I've made that argument before. I still think, I mean, obviously I feel differently now. I'm not gonna like curse anyone out if they think differently. However, if you dive into it more, you begin to realize that Magic Johnson was could not only do more things on the basketball court, but was the guy on those Lakers, on 3 of those Lakers teams. And I think in 1980, Magic wins Finals MVP is only because Kareem, who averaged like 34 and 14 throughout the series, was out for Game 7, and Magic had a 42 and 15 game. I mean, they gave the MVP to Magic. I still think that was Kareem's team. I think in 82, you could begin to make the argument that it had shifted. And then definitely for 85, definitely for 87, and definitely for 88, this was all Magic's team. I think that Magic Johnson, I mean, his skill set is obviously wider than Kareem's is. Kareem has the longevity. But Magic Johnson
length matters.
Really was what?
Said length matters.
Okay.
Depends on who you talk to, Sam.
That's true.
It does. Kareem knew what to do with it either way. With his career.
I just feel like Magic was a better part, a better. I feel like he was the cornerstone for those championships.
No, I agree. And
here,
go ahead.
And ultimately a better champion.
There was an old video going around of Bill Russell and Wilt Chamberlain talking. They were doing like an interview with like a late night TV show host. This was like in the early 90s. And it was give me your like best NBA players ever. And they both said it was the same guys. It was Larry, it was Magic, it was Michael Jordan, and they weren't allowed to say themselves. But they notably neither of them said Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. And this was at the point where his career is done and he had like just retired. So if there was any time where there was a public perception that he was one of the best players ever, it would be then. And these are the 2 greatest centers to have ever done it, according to everyone but Ben. And they both disregarded Kareem for that reason of him just being always like, he was just always considered kind of the afterthought to that Lakers team. I kind of did a deeper dive into like what the public perception was about him at the time. And it was all just like, yeah, he was just the steady guy that was always there, but was never the guy.
Right.
I feel like that's kind of interesting.
Andrew, go ahead, because I don't want to keep jumping in front of you, but I have a response for both of the Posmans because that's something.
But it legitimately is easy to get caught up in the resume. Like I did the same thing. I once made a comment. I said LeBron James is closer to Kareem Abdul-Jabbar than he is Michael Jordan. It's so easy to get bogged down in the resume, but when you start listening to what people that watched him say, it can kind of change how you think about some players.
So I've seen that exact clip that you're talking about, and that was my first reaction to Kareem. I do think there was something with like Wilt and Kareem specifically, where they had like a weird beef, and it has to do with the competitive nature of those guys.
They hated
they're not going to look at
they did.
They're not going to look at the modern at that time, right? The modern day.
Yeah.
This is the guy everyone's comparing to them. Be like, oh no, that guy's better than me. Like they're way. They might do that now. Like way. Way. You might be able to do that now, but at that time, those guys were not going to be like, oh yeah, like Kareem, yeah, better than me. No, like they're like every other guy they talked about was in a different position, right? I think that's what it comes down to more than anything for that clip. I would, when it comes to Kareem, I don't know. You used the longevity. I think it was a Mike mentioned longevity with Tim Duncan.
Longevity.
Longevity. It's late.
Christ, Cohen.
It's late. But the longevity too. Like I don't know. What about Kareem's championship in Milwaukee? We didn't even mention that. And you also have to keep in mind that for those later championships, we're talking about a 37-year-old or 40-year-old Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and a Magic Johnson in his prime.
Mike, I swear to God, if you bring up LeBron right now, I'm gonna
obviously, Magic Johnson's going to be the leader of that team. And so I think that part of the argument breaks down a little bit when you consider that.
So to go off of that last point,
don't say
before I have another one, I'm fairly confident Kareem grabs a Finals MVP in those last couple too. Like he was still a highly critical part of that team. I think he won a Finals MVP at like 38 or 40.
I think he's the longest.
He won it in 85. He won it in 85.
He was 37.
He won it in 85.
37 years old.
Yeah. There you go. So he's even at that point, he's still very critical. And Sam, to your point about the perception and the older players, I'm gonna roll with Andrew on the Bill Russell and Wilt Chamberlain thing. I know for a fact Wilt and Kareem hated each other's guts.
Yeah.
Because Kareem didn't like the way that Wilt handled himself with regards to activism and speaking out. I believe that was the cause.
It is.
And second, is there anything like we know old players love nothing more than to hate on the current generation that is catching up to them. Right? Michael Jordan's never going to sit in an argument while LeBron James is playing and say LeBron James is at his level. He's never going to say it.
And nor should he.
Yeah, but do you understand how hard it is for Bill Russell to say that Larry Bird is one of those guys? When
no,
when you take into account the reason why he was driven out of Boston and the reason why Boston immediately flooded to Larry Bird, like to admit that is far harder to say than to compare the hatred that those two had for each other. Like I think you can, if Larry Bird is if Bill Russell is acknowledging that, he can acknowledge Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, someone that he highly respected.
All right, I think I'm not going to disagree with that. Or we should not try to psychoanalyze an interview from two older players from the 90s. All I'm saying is I'm not putting any weight into a GOAT argument or an all-time ranking argument based off an interview of former players talking about current players. That will never factor in for me.
That's fair. But I'm saying that's what sparked me to figure out what did people actually say about him at the time.
That's fine. And then my second thing is the media in those days, Kareem was surly. He was disliked by a lot of the country, flatly hated by a lot of the country. Magic was this kid wonder. He smiles. He's exciting. The public personas are so ridiculously skewed in favor of Magic to be the more popular player that I'm not putting any credence in how the media approach those players either. And then again, to Andrew's point, that's going to feed right into Magic just happening to be the younger player. So yeah, he might have been the guy on a couple of those teams when Kareem is freaking ancient. We're talking about him playing to his late 30s and 40s in an era where Larry Bird broke down at 30, 31? Yeah. That's unprecedented stuff from him. So if your argument is going to be based on Magic Johnson leading a couple of those championship teams over Kareem, I'm going to have a problem with it in that sense. And then my other one is, if the argument is that Magic Johnson, if Kareem played longer, won more, accomplished more individually, but Magic was the superior player on a few runs when they played together, and the eye test said Magic Johnson's the better player, Why is Kevin Durant behind Steph Curry on both of your?
There it
both?
is. I
That's-
knew
I'm
that
not-
was.
It's
that
the
is a
I knew that
same
was
fantastic
coming.
point.
argument.
That is a fantastic
I
point.
knew that
Keep
was coming.
screwing yourselves like this. You make one argument and you stick by it, and then you go make the exact opposite argument for somebody else. Then we have to circle around and call you out for it. It's the exact same argument. Everything get bogged down by the resume, Sam. You know what the resume is? It's what he accomplished in the sport he played. He was the best
I
high
know.
school player of all time. He's the best college player of all time, and he may be the greatest NBA player of all time. No one argues Magic's the GOAT because LeBron's better at everything Magic did. Mike surpassed Magic. Those two, their resumes, even those two, the resumes struggle to catch up to Kareem. And then if you really want to do the deep dive, this is again a shout out to Nick Wright. If you watch the Kareem episode, yes, he won one before Magic. Magic didn't win any without Kareem. Now, he didn't play very long either, so you'll give him a little for the benefit of the doubt, but he was also not probably stealing any from Mike at that point. Kareem lost, I think, a few times as a top 1 or 2 seed because the first round happened to be a best of 3. So Kareem was a victim of circumstance early on in his career before he got to Magic. The winning more than likely would have been higher. And then they get to Magic, and he's clearly the guy for the first half of their run. I don't think that's disputable. For the first chunk, it's Kareem's team. And then it becomes Magic's team as the age progression naturally shifts to Magic. But at one point it was Kareem, and then at one point it was Magic. So the argument can't be that Magic was a superior player on a couple runs, and that's going to overshadow the vast difference in their career resume, especially when it's the same argument you guys used to defend Steph over Katie.
It's a little different.
How-
Well, the first
I'm
argue
not
that.
doing this. I'm not doing this.
Hold on, hold on.
What are you not doing?
I want to say I have a couple things for Mike.
It's the same argument.
I have a couple things for Mike. I think first off, and I'll bring up two points. The first being you can't say that you can't use that Bill Russell was the level playing field argument and then say that Kareem was a victim of his era. I don't think that tracks very well.
Is that how the
Secondly, I think
turntables,
you're
Mike Randall?
I think you're downplaying what Magic Johnson did with Kareem on his team. And I think that the MVPs and the scoring titles without Magic have maybe been exaggerated a little bit, especially if he's not like, it's not like he's this ultimate competitor in the finals where he's, yes, he only won one, but he went to a lot more. No, he went to one more. I'm like, and then you go into the 80s. It wasn't like Magic was the guy on a couple runs. It's that Magic was the guy on at least 3, maybe 4 of the 5. So it's not just like 2. We're talking definite majority, nearly 80%. In 1988, it's still impressive that Kareem was playing in that time, which I do think is a very good point, considering that Larry Bird only made it to, like you said, 31.
Injuries.
But in the 1988 finals, he's not stealing any MVPs. He averaged 13 and 7. I mean, there's nothing that he could do in the finals that they couldn't find someone to do. It wasn't like he was his integral part. He was.
Well, no, Ben, be careful there, because people are going to look back and they're going to look at Draymond Green box scores and be like, this guy was 9 and 7 in the finals. They can find someone else to do that. Like when there are these guys that are keystones to the franchise, you can't limit their success to the box score.
Draymond isn't defined by his scoring. Kareem is. If you look at Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, his career is his scoring prowess. There's a difference. Draymond's a defensive player of the year. People are going to be like, okay, his defensive impact is more than his offensive impact. Kareem's claim to fame is his scoring, that he's done at a proficient level through the vast majority of his career. And he doesn't do that at that level anymore with Magic on these teams. He had a brief revival in the 1985 finals, but he wasn't insane in 82, which was 3 years prior and 2 years after his MVP that he won with Magic on the Lakers. I think a lot of the Lakers' success can be attributed to Magic more than can be attributed to Kareem. And Kareem did not accomplish enough in the playoffs by himself without Magic for me to put him over. Not to mention the wider skills that Magic has on the basketball court, but that's obviously goes without saying.
Yeah, but that's true for if you're going to do the skill thing, then we might as well scrap half the centers. That's the nature of the game. Like, did Kareem not run or pass as well? Yeah, he wasn't a point guard. But what he did was more effective than Magic in the fact that he's the all-time leading scorer. He was a dominant force before, right through. And I'm fine with the argument that Magic was the guy or the more important player for more runs than Kareem was, and that's because of age and because of the natural progression. He's also the lead ball handler. But the narrative cannot become, well, Kareem needed Magic, but Magic, if you swap out Kareem with so-and-so, would have won anyway. That's not true either.
Well, I said that for 1 year when Kareem was 13-7. I'm not saying that for the entirety of their playoff
I know,
success.
and that's fine. He also had some big games later in his career, but in that 1 year, that is true. Whatever. Kareem did have the free throws at the end of that final championship against the Pistons, but Kareem's dominance leading up to Magic, right through, how do we know Magic's the same player if Kareem Abdul-Jabbar is not putting him in big leverage playoff games to start his career out?
We don't.
We don't.
So
This is a hypothetical. Hypotheticals aren't allowed in all-time great discussion.
I don't.
I will say the argument for Magic over Kareem is not like an offensive one, even if I might have been approaching it as such. I just wanted to point out what I felt was a hypocrisy in the way you were handling the Magic and Kareem argument compared to how you handle the Steph and KD argument. But the fact of the matter remains that Kareem accomplished more and they needed each other. It was a mutually beneficial relationship that is incredibly hard to nitpick to the point that you can definitively pull out enough from Magic to justify leapfrogging him over Kareem, who you can cut Kareem's career almost in half. And his resume is going to hang up there with Magic and pretty much everything except pure titles because they needed each other for those. And that cannot be disputed. We talk about Kobe had Shaq. Well, these two dudes had the third best player had the fourth best player and the fourth best player, the third best player, however you're going to rank them. So I think Kareem's overall body of work was enough to separate him all time from Magic convincingly, especially when you factor in that it is damn near impossible to pull out and separate the two as champions together because it was together. And if you take out either, maybe give or take one or two, even if you scrap the credit Kareem gets for Magic's final, Kareem already had one without Magic. So then it evens out. So I don't think there's enough there that you can really abstract to make a compelling enough argument to definitively put Magic ahead of Kareem, especially if you're then going to argue that the eye test and media popularity is important.
I think that's a good place to end.
I agree. King Jamer, thank you so much for this list.
Yes, great list.
Great time discussing it. Great time picking it apart.
Great
debate. Like Mike said before, I appreciate that. I appreciate anyone that goes out there, makes a list like this, and puts in the time, the research, and has a strong. I like how you have a strong. You didn't waver on your opinions, even when we were throwing everything at you.
And you had an argument for each one too. It was not sloppily thrown together, and you were willing to come on and defend even the most egregious of your decisions.
Of course, I understand. I understand the reaction. I didn't think it was unwarranted, and I also was expecting it. So I wasn't surprised by any of the backlash I may have received.
All right, we'll end it off there. Thank you guys so much for listening.
Whoa,
what?
Whoa.
Oh, right. This is my bad. It's been a while. It's time for
you fully reverted back to the solo Cohen Courtside podcast days.
You know what that was, Sam?
Pre-merger era.
You know what I went back to the ABA. You know what that was, Sam? That was a bottle job. I will fully admit. It's time for the greatest segment on this show. It's time for Sam's send off by Sam. Presented by no one.
Heineken.
Heineken?
Sam,
Yes.
before you go, can I just shout out real quick? UFC 278 this weekend. Kamaru Usman defending his title, pound for pound king. Tune in.
Am I about to get a
For
Venmo
goat
request?
status, people. You need to be watching. What?
All right.
Am I going to get a Venmo request?
Yeah, probably.
That's so cool. Just let me know. Let me know before. I've been a little low on finances.
Dude, I've been
recently.
watching
I put
so many old fights on your ESPN Plus account. The UFC did a top 25 fights of all time. They play the full fight in each episode. Like 25 to 21 is a 2-hour thing. I watched like 4 hours of that today. It was fantastic.
Wow.
Post internship, Mike Randall's a menace to this world.
All right.
So,
It's time.
All right,
What
so
do you got for us?
our theme today is scattershot. There's no theme. It's a goddamn potluck. The first thing is a collective thing we're all gonna do. It's just gonna be a bonding activity.
Okay.
We're gonna go around and we're gonna say one thing that we learned from discussing these all-time great lists. What is something that we can take into the future with us? I
Okay.
can start. Mine is that everyone grew up watching their guys and that they're going to stick with their guys. So when we try and discredit eras, we're really discrediting generations of basketball fans, which I don't think is a fair thing to do.
All right. I'll go next.
Positive Posman, back at it. Don't mind me.
I think I learned the most about Dr. J's ABA time today. I looked a little bit more in depth at some of the teams he was going up against. Now, again, that Utah team he beat in the first championship. I'm sorry, but I will give you this: the Nuggets team he beat in the second one had a bunch of legit players on it. David Thompson, Dan Issel. So I will give you that one. I learned a lot more about Dr. J's ABA time today, and I'll consider him more. As a top. I think I could slot him in at around 14 on my all-time list.
That's exactly where I have him. Let's go, Cohen.
Who's next?
I think Mike's gonna go next.
I think he is too.
I learned. I think the era discussion we had was really interesting. I really appreciated Ben's argument. I think it forced me to consider one that I hadn't, because Ben, I mentioned it at the very beginning. I used to weight eras similar to the way you did, and I almost discredited Bill Russell. And this isn't necessarily something I learned just now in the episode, but I think we should all give a collective shout out to the impact Russell had on the country and the sports world and basketball in particular. And sadly, with his passing, I have since kind of learned more and looked more into just what that impact was on and off the court, but more so almost on the court, because I knew what a figure he was off. But on the court, I think it's important that we understand the impact he had on the sport and how he influences these great debates that we're going to have for years and years and years and years. His name's never going to fade from this, and it's going to keep shows like this going for a long time, because he was so dominant in an era. He almost discredits the era by abusing it to such a level.
A true untouchable of the game.
Literally,
Yep.
You can't poke a hole. The only hole you can poke is by criticizing the people whose asses he whooped. That's it.
In 2012,
All you can do. Think about that. That's all you can do.
Yeah.
That's crazy. That is crazy.
In 2012, Bill Simmons did a thing where he went and lived with Bill Russell for 2 days because they were shooting this like special segment thing for ESPN. But he kept his notes for all the stuff that happened off the air. And he released it in like a 30-minute podcast on the Bill Simmons feed. It is fantastic. And even Mike Randall, the biggest Bill Simmons hater in the world, should give it a listen.
I was going to say, I might give Bill the benefit of the doubt and Bill Simmons the benefit of the doubt and listen to that. Although I will listen to no other of his content.
Good. Then what did you learn today?
I learned about the dark time in the NBA during the 1970s, and not only just in the NBA, but for basketball. And I think it's important how we not only value that time, but the time after it and the time before it. And I think we had very good, spirited, and informed discussions about it.
Good work, everyone.
All right.
Okay,
Good work.
moving on to part 2 of Sam's send-off by Sam. It's a 3-part segment today, so don't worry, I won't keep you here too long. I have a quick tip to make money for everyone. It's literally free money. The sports books are handing it out if you live in a legal gambling state, or if you have a semi-legal way of gambling online, which I
Wait,
don't.
when are we legal, Sam?
So we were legal as of August 2nd, but the main bill has a clause in it where online gambling is exclusively in the hands of the indigenous peoples of Maine. So they are all the different tribes are currently negotiating with different national sports books to figure out which ones are going to partner with which ones. It's going to take forever.
I was going to say, so can I place a bet yet or no?
2024.
Oh my God, Massachusetts is going to be there before Maine. That's crazy. That was one of the I got to say, real quick, that was one of the greatest upsets of all time when Massachusetts passed that bill. And apparently, it's a really good bill, too. Like, you can bet on anything besides in college sports in Massachusetts.
That's pretty good, dude. Maybe we'll have to make
It
some
is.
Hodges.
Right. All right.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's the money tip?
If you have access, it is plus odds, plus 135 specifically, for the AFC champion to come out of the AFC West. That's free money. Go and take your free money. Just go do it. It's free money. I won't even charge
So
you
you're
cents on the
just
dollar.
so
for
it's really what? It's really what? Just like, I mean,
Raiders, Chargers, Jackson Mahomes' brother, and Russell Wilson.
Listen,
go-
I
it's
will
okay,
hate,
but it's not Russell Wilson. It's not Russell Wilson. It's the Broncos, and
So
it's
fine, they're not
not-
going to do it, but one of the top 2 will.
Sam,
Go.
Sam.
okay. So you're betting on the Chiefs and Chargers.
Sam, you're
That's it.
betting on the Chiefs. No, you're betting to get to the Super Bowl. You're betting on the Chiefs.
Go get your free
The
money.
other teams aren't doing it. You're
Listen,
not
Go
going from
get your free money.
either.
Andrew
Derek
Cohen,
Carr-
you're the
Derek
biggest
Carr.
goddamn Chargers fan this world has ever seen.
it's true.
You defend
It's
me
true.
on this.
I have the Chiefs finishing
I
third in the
think
division
Chargers
this
have a
year.
legitimate chance.
The Chiefs finishing in third in the division. Here's the one thing I do worry about. And listen, I will hate on the Bills as much as the next guy. But what's going to happen this year is that AFC West is going to beat up on each other.
Yeah.
And so the Bills are going to get the first seed, and they're going to have
Exactly.
the path. And so whoever's going to play Buffalo, they're going to have to go to Buffalo. And I'm not convinced Kansas City will be that team necessarily. I like the Chargers, but if they have to go to Buffalo, it's the Chargers from LA going to Buffalo in January. The
Not gonna happen.
Raiders are a dome
Playing in
team.
front of a real home crowd
Yeah.
too.
Yeah.
Go hedge your bets. Put some money on the Bills. Put some money on the AFC West, and you'll make money no matter what.
Dude, I think it feels like the Bills are due.
It does.
It really does.
But then
Like-
again,
Or what?
the Bills
Oh.
did lose 4 Super Bowls in a row. And
I didn't say they would win. I just said
that's
Poverty
true. They
franchise.
just have to get
Poverty
there.
franchise.
to
By
get
the way,
there.
I saw a great thing on Twitter the other day. It was a Bills fan wearing a Scott Norwood jersey. He was the kicker during that era. But
Oh, I love
it
it.
was like Norwood, but like the name started in the middle, so it was all off to the side, off to the right. Just like the field goal attempt off to the right.
Dude,
was-
okay.
Giants legend. Are you kidding me?
Yeah, I know.
That was against the Giants.
Yeah.
It's one of our LT Super Bowls.
Yep.
Love Scott Norwood.
I'm adding in a 4th segment. I'm going to do that one right now before we get to the last one.
Real quick, can I just point out that Sam is reading this off like a yellow notepad, and I appreciate it greatly.
Got the yellow legal pad.
Yeah.
Thank you. Shout out because Andrew decided to discredit specialists everywhere. Shout out Justin Tucker on getting the bag. And by the way, still the most underrated player in the league. But shout out Justin Tucker for that.
He only got the bag because Chris Boswell got the bag.
Sam, I got a question for you, and it's more of a question for Andrew because I know how you're gonna fall. So I think it was Nick Wright brought it up.
It's all
on the podcast.
freaking Nick Wright.
Dude. He's killing it.
He
Right?
talks a lot.
No, but you'll like this one. So
He
he
does
brought up on his podcast that he's getting paid 6, he's worth 16. Do you think he is still underpaid?
Yes.
Or are you okay with the kicker capping out around in the mid single digits for yearly money?
Oh, I'm totally okay with them capping out at a certain point. Because, like, the fact of the matter is, is Justin Tucker that much better than everyone else at his position versus what you could get at other positions for the difference in price. Like that's the issue. It's the kicker. It's a lot easier to find just like Nick Folk was out of football for like 2 years, and like tryout teams didn't get a job. The Patriots pick him up, and he's been like, is he as good as Justin Tucker? I hate to admit it, no. But the fact of the matter is, like, if like Nick Folk would never make anywhere close to 10 to 15 million, but the production between him and Justin Tucker isn't different enough to warrant that much of a difference in price.
The difference in the top levels of kicking is a lot closer to the difference in the bottom levels of kicking. So I feel like, yeah, there's probably a cap somewhere. But I mean, I'm biased, and even I'm going to say that he's only on the field however many times a game. Like,
yeah,
you shouldn't pay him like you're starting left guard or something like that.
Okay.
But no one does what he does, and he should be getting $100 million a game.
Wait, I have a question, Sam. If you were to look at
Texas too, that's
That's a good left turn.
How many kickers would you say all time, just off the top of your head, are better than Justin Tucker?
0.
Adam Vinatieri?
I'd go with one.
I'd go
kicking a
Vinatieri.
football, there's 0. There's a kicker with bigger legacy moments than Justin Tucker, but someone as a pure striker of a football, no one's ever done it like that.
But like if you were okay, that's fair. But Adam Vinatieri is the greater kicker all time.
Cap.
Just like how we looked at when we were doing the list with King Jammer there. It's not just about talent.
It's not about talent. But when you're a basketball player, you control the moments you're put in. When you're a kicker,
If it's about
talent,
talent, Kevin Durant would be top 5 all time.
He'd definitely be above Steph Curry.
Like, let's put it into perspective.
He would.
One of Justin Tucker's, like what people would probably say is one of Justin Tucker's 3 or 5 best career moments was a game-winning field goal against the Detroit Lions.
Andrew Cohen, that was the goddamn farthest kick in NFL history. I don't want to hear
a Super Bowl in the.
Did the Ravens even make the playoffs that year?
Legacy debates about
can't control any of it.
Did he hit 2 kicks in the snow?
Oh my!
A&M.
Yeah.
He said goodbye to A&M for the final time. That was the biggest kick I've ever seen in my life.
Sam, what was the result of that kick against A&M? Did Texas go anywhere that year?
But the very last time we ever.
No. Did they go? What
year?
What backwater trash ass bowl did they win that year?
Oh, the Texas Bowl. Or the goddamn Alamo Bowl.
It was.
That's like if Jason. Oh, go ahead.
Oh no, I was gonna throw out some random bowl game like the Sweet Frog Bowl that Notre Dame has been cast into.
I was gonna say that's like
it was the year after Colt left. We were stuck with Garrett Gilbert. He wasn't doing anything.
Yeah, I've seen him in the NFL.
No, he was.
I was gonna say it's like
he's a pro quarterback.
Yeah. I've seen him starting more games recently than Colt McCoy.
Cohen.
No, I was gonna say that's like if Jason Tatum.
This is about to be Courtside without Andrew Cohen.
It's like if Jason Tatum hit the layup against the Nets and they proceeded to lose 4 straight. That's the Justin Tucker kick that you hype up from all those years ago.
No.
See, okay, you know what? No. I gotta stop. See, we made a decision to be more positive on this podcast recently.
Yeah, but that's not fun.
Yeah, it's true.
Right? Like
it's true. That's what I've realized. Fun. I'm having a blast right now.
I saw some tweet. It was like somebody tweeted something about being a fan, and they're like, "My favorite fan activity is just preying on people's downfall." Blast.
Yeah.
Like,
okay.
All right.
Let's pray.
Absolutely.
Skip Bayless has made a living out of it.
Yeah. Fuck Skip
millions.
Bayless.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, Sam. Let's finish
Ronnie
it up.
Stuff, dude. Like, relax.
And then used his offspring
we
to
get it. You can't make
Your dad would have dunked that left-handed.
And then he went on the show and tried to say it was a compliment. He wasn't criticized.
Yeah. Yeah, because he finally realized that, I don't know, going after a kid is a little bit too much. Anyways, Sam, part 4.
Part 4 actually does prey on someone's downfall. And Ben, I know that you were resembling a punching bag for a good part of this episode. I'm sorry for that.
Oh, it's no worries.
Manchester United.
Yeah.
Holy hell. This is literally the most For those who they're the Dallas Cowboys, they're the Lakers, they're the most historied club ever. 10 years ago, their manager retires because he was anxious. They've had what, like 5 managers since then, Ben?
7, 8,
7 managers,
including
8
interim
managers,
guys.
8 managers in 10 years. This is the year where they finally go. They bring back Ronaldo and they say, "We found our manager." This brilliant Dutch tactician out of Ajax, like right, Dutch, whatever he is.
Yep.
They're like, this guy is being praised as like he just sees the sport at a higher level. They start the season. Have you ever heard of the team Brighton and Hove Albion?
No.
At home, they lose to Brighton 2-1. Have you ever heard of a team called Brentford? Their mascot's the Bees.
Nope.
Nope.
They lose 4-0. Like, this is the lowest point of any big club I've seen. I don't understand what's happening. It's like, it's shocking to me. The thing is, in the 2-1 loss, they didn't even score. It was an own goal from Brighton, which means that if Manchester United don't score next game and they're playing Liverpool, or a top 5 club in the world, if they don't score against Liverpool, their goal of the month is going to have to be the Brighton own goal.
Wait, is like goal of the month a thing?
Yes.
Is it like
like each club puts out a goal in a month.
like do they just like put it on like Twitter and social media and stuff?
Yeah. They're going to have to find
exactly.
something from their training footage or an own goal from Brighton.
Oh my god. Wait, so they have one
They're
more
not
match
going to
this month.
score either.
Against Liverpool.
When is that?
Who is,
And
I might watch that.
It's this coming Monday.
It is
All right.
on Monday. And one thing to say about Liverpool is they're not just a great team. They have they probably have the best defense in the entire world.
I like
so
defense.
the chances of them scoring is very slim.
This has got me excited about soccer in so many new ways. Oh my, that would be like the all-time tweet. Like, here's our goal of the month, and it's like the Brentford third stringer. Right back into the goal.
Exactly.
Or it's like Ronaldo just on an open field by himself.
So that's all I wanted to share.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Sam.
Sam.
I hope that sends you off all very well.
Sending me off happy. That was
I
fantastic.
agree.
I can keep them satisfied, Cohen.
That's always what you're looking for.
What he does.
Yeah. All right. Thank you guys out there so much for listening. If you enjoyed, leave a like, subscribe, leave a review. We might have King Jammer on again. Next time he has a terrible take, we'll bring him back and we'll eviscerate him again. Because did you have fun today, Ben?
I did. I actually did have fun.
And that's what matters.
It's enjoyable.
You took a beating, so that's good.
You did. And we respect you more for it.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you guys so much for listening. We'll be back next time, maybe in a week or so. NFL is getting underway soon.
Maybe back from the studio.
We might be back in the studio next time.
Might be back in the studio next time.
in the studio.
The summer
All right.
Zoom pods are coming to an end.
Yeah. All right. Thank you guys so much for listening.